All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my first weekly fantasy football start, sit, and sleeper and bust. My name is Dylan Enner. We're going to be going over every single position for the upcoming week in the NFL season. So, at quarterback, for starts, here we start with Aaron Rodgers. He is facing the Detroit Lions, who currently hold up at 28th against quarterbacks. And after a dominant week one, obviously, you're going to start Rodgers. I mean, can you expect him to replicate what he did in week one? I would say so. 400 against a Lions defense that is clearly subpar, even with a defensive mind and Matt Patricia. I definitely think Rodgers could have a field day against the Lions, especially after what Trubisky was able to do to them and have 29 points. So yeah, definitely looking for Aaron Rodgers to have a big game again. And we also have Josh Allen coming here against Miami, who ranks 23rd against quarterbacks. Allen was outstanding in week one, was his first 300-yard passing game of his young career against, it was a terrible Jets defense, but still, first 300-yard passing game of his career. And then Allen has actually averaged 35 points a game. This is with 6-point touchdowns. 35 points a game against the Dolphins. So I would probably expect more of the same, especially after the Dolphins kind of let Cam Newton have a revival game there in week one with 25 points. So yeah, definitely going Josh Allen as well. And speaking of Cam Newton, actually, we're gonna go on the Cam Newton bandwagon once again against Seattle. And he's definitely going to need more than 20 pass attempts to be relevant because I don't think he's having 75 rushing yards a game. I mean, he could, but I just don't see it happening this week at least. But with that being said, his dual threat abilities do give him a relatively safe floor. And I mean, I guess you could say he has a high ceiling as well, given that the rushing potential is always there. And I do expect somewhat of a shootout, even though the Patriots' offense isn't that amazing. And then we're also going with a former Patriot. We're going Tom Brady against the Panthers. And I'm a little biased. I have Brady in a couple of leagues, but if every one of his receivers are healthy this week, that depends because Chris Godwin's in the concussion protocol right now. But if everyone lines up, I do see top 5 potential this week. He struggled last week also, but I mean, that's the Saints defense. Probably one of the top 5 defenses in the league, honestly, in terms of talent from at every level. But the Panthers just got scorched by the Raiders. So let's be honest here. If the Raiders can do it, I expect the greatest quarterback of all time to be able to do more of the same. And then we actually have rounding out the starts here. We got Ryan Tannehill coming up against the Jaguars. And now the Jaguars defense nowhere near what they used to be. And Tannehill actually scored 36 against them in week 12 of last year. And he was honestly my waiver pickup of the year last year. He was a stud. And he actually has 21 points in 5 straight games and 10 of his last 11 dating back to last year. So look for him to stay hot. I definitely think top 10 potential here against the Jaguars defense I'm not sold on. As far as sleepers go, we're going to go with Gardner Minshew as our first sleeper and Trubisky as number 2. So Minshew scored 21 last year against Tennessee, and I would say that's probably what you should expect this year as well in the first matchup against the Titans. Now, again, 20 points, nothing crazy, but you could definitely do worse at the position. And the same goes for Trubisky. So he had a good game last week. I mean, it started off a little slow, but he ended up with 242 yards and about 26 rushing yards last week, and he's playing yet again another terrible defense, so I would give him a good chance to probably replicate it. Again, you could definitely do worse than Trubisky, so I would definitely give him a look for this week. And now as far as sits go, we do have a couple surprises here. I start with Drew Brees. I mean, I do consider him a low-end starter, but with Michael Thomas out, I would definitely temper my expectations. Raiders don't have a fantastic defense, but aside from Kamara and like Jared Cook, if Sanders can make an immediate impact this week, then maybe Drew Brees could be passed off as a high-end starter. But right now, I would say temper expectations. Keep him as a low-end starter right now. And then Carson Wentz, I'm fading Carson Wentz completely this week. The Rams are currently 13th against quarterbacks. And Lane Johnson and Miles Sanders are returning, but that O-line is still going to be shoddy overall. And how do you think? I just don't think they're going to fare well against Aaron Donald. No shot. Absolutely no chance. And with 2 interceptions and a fumble against a very okay Redskins secondary, I'm not seeing it this week. And they even held Dak Prescott. The Rams even held Dak Prescott to only 19 points last week. So just no point in starting Carson Wentz if you have anyone else. I'd rather start like Minshew or Trubisky over Carson Wentz this week. And then I also got Matthew Stafford here against the Packers. This is more of a product of Golladay being out. If Golladay was in, I would have a little more trust in Stafford, but he only managed 17 points last week against Chicago without Golladay, and had a miserable game last year against the Packers, actually surprisingly. He only had 10 points last year in one of their games. And I would expect the Packers secondary and pass rush to hold up once again. And then we got Daniel Jones. This is more of a I don't trust him yet. You could probably go ahead and start him, but I would just be wary. He's a little turnover prone, but he did do well against the Steelers. He had 21 points against the Steelers, and the volume should definitely be there. But against an opportunistic Bears defense, I just see the turnovers being a concern again. Now, down the road, Daniel Jones, 100% starter, 100%. He's going to be great down the road, but just the first two matchups against the Steelers and the Bears, not that great. And then we got Derek Carr rounding up the sits for the week. He was not great against the Panthers defense, even though the Panthers defense is kind of garbage, with only 15 points. And against a much better defense in the Saints, we're not trusting Carr in any format. Two quarterback leagues, deep leagues, streaming, no, we're just not trusting Carr. And then as a bust, surprising somewhat, I have Deshaun Watson. Now, this is more of not necessarily his talent, but he's playing the Ravens. And he managed to score 22 against the Chiefs, but that was honestly mostly in garbage time. No real meaningful stats. And the Ravens defense, as good as the Chiefs defense has gotten and improved, the Ravens defense is just vastly superior. So obviously you're still starting him because you probably drafted him pretty high, but temper expectations and he's probably going to score the same amount of points, probably around 19, 20 is what I'm expecting. But also don't be shocked if he just has a terrible game in general. It has like 10, 15 points. And now we move on to running backs. So we're going to start here with Nyheim Hines. So the Vikings are currently 25th against running backs. And Rivers honestly has a history of throwing to his running backs. And last week, his running backs combined for 17 catches and 142 yards and a touchdown, with Hines actually scoring 2 touchdowns. A rushing touchdown, which was somewhat surprising given that Taylor was available. And then he also had 8 catches for 45 and a touchdown. Definitely start him. Great option in PPR leagues. And then we have the often ignored Ronald Jones. So he played about 50% of the snaps last week, which was encouraging to see considering they signed Leonard Fournette. And they also have some other players like LaShawn McCoy in the backfield. So the fact that he got 50% of snaps was pretty impressive. And he also had 17 carries for 66 yards. Now, I know it's nothing impressive. But you have to take into consideration that it was the Saints defense. So against the Panthers defense, it got shredded by Josh Jacobs and the Raiders. Expect him to run wild. I would consider him a low-end starter, probably maybe a low-end RB2, high-end flex in all formats with a good chance for a breakout. And then we also have David Montgomery. So he played okay against the Lions, 13 carries for 64 yards. But this is more of he ran well. It was just his offensive line wasn't really giving him too much. And the Giants' defense is very okay, but they got gashed by Benny Snell. He had like over 100 yards. So on a short week, I do expect a chance at running over the Giants, as well as the obvious potential for goal line carries because he's the biggest back they have. So definitely start him in all formats with an upgraded non-PPR leagues. And then rounding out the starts, we have Benny Snell. This is merely if James Conner doesn't play. If James Conner is active or playing even half the snaps, then you're not starting. But you're not starting either one of the running backs, in my opinion. But with Snell, if Snell starts, I expect at least 15 carries plus. He's definitely a must start on a short week for the Titans. Definitely a must start. And then we move on to sleepers for the running back. So we got Zach Moss is the first one. So both running backs, honestly, here for the Bills, Singletary and Zach Moss are relatively good plays. There's a homecoming game for both of them. They're both from South Florida. So I would say Singletary is the low-end starter just because I would expect him to get the majority of the carries, even though that wasn't really the case last week. But Zach Moss, I would consider being a flex play due to his goal line carry ability. And he also somehow got a receiving touchdown last week, which honestly I wasn't expecting. And so the Dolphins defense, I know it's my team, but they leave a lot to be desired, so I would expect a strong outing from both of these running backs. And then we got J.K. Dobbins. So this is more of he is the most talented running back on his roster, and it's not close. And also he had the most snaps of any Ravens running back last week and managed to score 2 touchdowns. So in a game that I don't expect to be particularly close against the Texans, definitely expect a lot of running potential from J.K. Dobbins and some goal line opportunities. And then we got James White here. This is more of Patriots are going to have to definitely pass the ball more than they did against the Dolphins. Because let's be real here, the Seahawks are definitely much better than the Dolphins. And I feel like with shootout potential, James White is going to be utilized more in the passing game since he is the only real passing back that they have. Because that's simply Sonny Michel. He's not catching the ball. So I would say low-end PPR flex play. Don't expect like 20, 25 points, even though it is possible. But I'd say somewhere like in the 10 to 12, maybe 15 range. That's realistic. And let's see. So as far as the last running back for sleepers, we have Antonio Gibson coming up against the Cardinals, who rank second to last against running back so far. And I do think this is because he is going to continue to get more touches as the season goes on. Clearly the most talented running back. Peyton Barber, 17 carries, 29 yards. Yeah, he had 2 touchdowns, but I mean, that kind of efficiency is kind of garbage. So he had 11 touches in his first game, which for his first NFL action, you take that. You take 11 touches. You'll take that. And the Cardinals defense just allowed 9 catches for 162 yards and a touchdown to the Niners running backs last week. So definitely, you could do worse than Gibson. Since he's the last person on my sleeper list, I would say give him a shot in a deeper league. But definitely keep him as the season goes along. I would expect more and more touches by the week. And as far as sits go, so this one was tough. So I have James Robinson here. He had a good NFL debut against a solid Colts defensive front, but I do expect him to have a harder time against a good Titans team. Even though Melvin Gordon had a good game, but Melvin Gordon is also better than James Robinson, so he could be a solid flex, but is not a must-start option just yet. Keep an eye on him, though. Definitely keep him on your bench, and with another good week, could slide into must-start flex territory, or even running back too, depending on how good he does down the road. And then next one we got Mark Ingram, and this is because I just see J.K. Dobbins as the superior back in that backfield. There's nothing that Mark Ingram does better than J.K. Dobbins. So if the Ravens were smart, they would most likely start to give J.K. Dobbins more of the snaps and the carries in the backfield and some receptions. And last week he had 10 carries, which is good, but only really managed 29 yards on it. So 2.9 yards a carry. Yeah, we're not liking that. He could be a useful flex, but you could do better. Not a must start anymore. No more. And then Adrian Peterson, people might be chasing points because he had a good debut. He had 93 yards, some catches, but he played less than DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is the more explosive running back at this point in their careers, with Swift being a rookie and then Peterson being a veteran. So I don't think, with the Lions probably going to be down big against the Packers, I'm not thinking that they're going to be running the ball that much. So definitely don't chase points this week, and I would definitely fade Adrian Peterson this week. And then last, this one's honestly a no-brainer. People still trust Sony Michel. I mean, he led the team with 10 carries and a touchdown, but once again, no involvement in the passing game. He ceded work to other backs like J.J. Taylor. He ceded work to J.J. Taylor. And with Cam Newton vulturing carries and touchdowns, I just can't consider starting Michel in any format aside from maybe a deeper league as a flex. That's about it. And then, so here we go. We got a running back bust. This is rounding up the running backs. We got Melvin Gordon. Now, he had a good game. He had a good game against the Steelers. He did have a fumble. And with Lindsey unexpected to play, I do think he's going to get the majority of the workload. But he is coming up against the Steelers, and we saw exactly what the Steelers did to Saquon, with 11 of his carries going for negative yards. He had 15 carries for 6 yards. 6 yards. Saquon Barkley. Low-end starter at best for Melvin Gordon. Obviously, if you drafted him, you're probably going to have to play him, but you can, I would say, maybe go for, honestly, if you have a chance to start like James White or that type of running back, I'd probably prefer James White this week, honestly, as opposed to Melvin Gordon. Not doing it. And now we go to wide receiver starts. Now this one is more of it's like, obviously you're starting Mike Evans, but I mean you should be a little concerned with how last week went, but with a week to get healthy and against the Panthers defense that doesn't really inspire any confidence, I would say I definitely expect them to get on track in a huge way. And if Godwin sits, bump up Evans even more. Definitely top 5 potential. And then you got T.Y. Hilton's, 2 words, Minnesota Vikings. You saw what Devontae Adams did to him. You saw what the Packers' top 3 receivers did to him with 316 yards. No, you're starting T.Y. Hilton. You're starting pretty much any Colts receiver that is within the top 3. You got Hines, Paris Campbell, Hilton. But Hilton especially, I do expect a bounce-back game after 2 drops last week. He's definitely going to want to bounce back after that one. And then we have Michael Gallup. So all Cowboys receivers 100% go this week. Cooper obviously a wide receiver 1, but he is dealing with a foot injury, and I saw not too long ago he was a game-time decision according to Jerry Jones, who he went on the radio and announced that. So with him being a game-time decision, if Cooper sits, Gallup is a wide receiver 1, 100%. He did okay in week 1, 3 catches, 50 yards, and he did have that long pass that was negated by a rather questionable pass interference call that Jalen Ramsey drew. I thought it was a terrible call, but that's another story for another day. And the Falcons secondary just got torched in week 1. So I would say expect more of the same. Gallup, Lamb, Cooper, all starts. And then rounding out the starts, we have Hollywood Brown. So this is his breakout season. I do think it will continue here. So all the talks of Lamar Jackson throwing downfield, becoming more accurate deep passer, short passer, any passing overall came to fruition. That is, he had 100 yards in his first game. Now the Texans did do a good job against Tyreek Hill, another speedster similar to Brown. That's the guy Brown gets a lot of comparisons to, in my opinion. But the other receivers benefited greatly. That Texans defense still does not inspire a ton of confidence. So you're obviously starting Hollywood Brown. I expect him to have another big game, over 100 yards. Easy. And now we move on to sleepers for the wide receivers. So we have Deontay Johnson, who I think is going to fill that Antonio Brown role for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, he's not the next Antonio Brown. That's not what I'm saying. But he is a must-start. I think he's a must-start. Even I would lift him as a sleeper because he's still kind of a flex play. But for the season as a whole, must play. You need to start him every week, every single time. Flex play, 100%. Now, Juju obviously must start, but Johnson actually led the team with 10 targets. So I do have a chance for a big game, possible wide receiver 2 potential here. And then we have Anthony Miller, Bears receiver. I know it's not Allen Robinson. It's kind of strange. But I had him listed, in my personal opinion, as a sleeper for week 1, and he had 4 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown. So against a Giants secondary that just allowed 3 touchdowns, I like his chances to have a repeat game. Definitely plug in Anthony Miller if you can. And then we have an interesting one here from the Jaguars, Laviska Shenault, the rookie. So he was a popular sleeper pick coming into the season from what I saw. And he had 3 catches, 37 yards, and a touchdown. And I see the Jags definitely playing from behind in week 2, so I could definitely see more targets go around as opposed to the 20 passes that Minshew had in week 1. And then a little bias on this one, we got Paris Campbell. I don't know if really you could classify him as a sleeper anymore, but I guess people still aren't jumping on the train yet. And I have him in 4 leagues, but after tying for the team lead in targets, it is definitely clear that the OSU product is ready to take that next step after an injury-plagued rookie year. He had 6 catches for 71 yards and even had a carry for 9 yards, so they're utilizing that speed. And against a garbage Vikings secondary, I expect big PPR performance. Definitely downgrade him in non-PPR, but in a full PPR league, definitely. I would say, honestly, I have him as my wide receiver 2 this week behind Devontae Adams on my team. So, I mean, definitely go for it. I would say definitely a good pick. And then we also have Emmanuel Sandler strictly because Michael Thomas is hurt. That's the only reason. But, I mean, hey, in a high-powered offense with Drew Brees as your quarterback, the de facto wide receiver 1 should warrant good returns. So definitely start Emmanuel Sanders if you can as a flex play. And let's see. So as far as sits go, we have Henry Ruggs. Now, he did have a good game last week and was he had 3 catches, 55 yards until he got hurt. Didn't make much of an impact second half. I mean, just expected. He wasn't 100%. But expect him to be lined up against stud cornerback Marshawn Lattimore from the Saints. So while I do have him as a great play going forward, not this week. You can do better. And then Deshaun Jackson, I shouldn't even have to live him as a sit anymore. I don't know why people are still plugging him into lineups. He's just simply a boomer bust. And against Jalen Ramsey and the Rams this week with Carson Wentz's issues, no, not happening. We're fading Deshaun Jackson. And then we have, let's see here, Jerry Jeudy coming up against the Steelers. So if Sutton doesn't play this week, which is looking like he has the potential to, but if not, if he does play, I mean, Judy's just not you're not starting him. But obviously, if Sutton plays, I don't know or Sutton misses the game, I still don't know if I can trust Jerry Jeudy this week. He played like a rookie last week, had some bad drops. I don't know if any of you guys watched that game, but he had some terrible drops, like wide open, middle of the field, just could not hold the ball at all. So I see against the Steelers defense that is once again pretty good. Yeah, we're not starting Jerry Jeudy. Down the road, expecting to be quality, just not yet. And then we have my boy Devontae Parker here. Now this is tough, but coming off a hamstring injury, I don't know if he's even going to play. I think last I saw he was a game time decision. So there is a chance he's playing as like just a decoy. And even if he plays, even if he was 100%, I'd still be concerned because he is drawing coverage, or most likely to draw coverage from standout cornerback Tre'Davious White. And this is definitely going to be an issue. Parker was great against him last year, but at less than 100%, my money is definitely on Tre'Davious White this game, 100%. And bus alert, I have DK Metcalf on my team, on a couple of teams, but I do expect to temper expectations this week. He was awesome in week 1. 4 catches, 95 yards, and a touchdown, 8 targets. But the problem is, even though he is a threat to score on pretty much every single play due to his speed and height, I expect some coverage from Stephon Gilmore, the reigning defensive player of the year, so that is not good. Tyler Lockett is likely to avoid that coverage by playing in the slot, so J.C. Jones is going to be likely to cover Tyler Lockett. So with DK Metcalf on the outside, on the perimeter, I expect him to draw coverage from Stephon Gilmore. And now, if DK Metcalf can come out of that matchup with like 20 points or something, or even a relatively modest game, it's going to be a big year for Metcalf. I think so. I already am very high on Metcalf, but this could prove it even further that he is ready to take that next leap. I would still start him, wide receiver 3, maybe like a low-end flex, but temper expectations. And now we move on to tight end. All right, so for the second year in a row, we got TJ Hawkinson here. Fantastic week 1, but I think this is the season. Young tight ends always struggle. So that first game kind of was a fluke last year, and he got hurt. But this year, I do expect a full-on breakout from TJ Hawkinson. All-around great tight end. And I do consider him, especially if Golladay is out, top 10 potential to play this week. 100%. TJ Hawkinson, definitely start him if you have him in your lineup. And then we have Jared Cook here coming in. He had 7 targets last week. And that's actually the 4th time as a Saints player that he's had more than 7 targets, or 7 or more. And in those games with 7+ targets, he's averaging 13 points per game, which, I mean, you can't complain. As a tight end position that is not, I mean, right now it's not super deep at the position. You can't complain with 13 points. So with Thomas out, I expect Breeze to lean on the veteran tight end on the road against the Raiders. And then now, this is a shot in the dark here, but I like Dallas Goedert more than Zach Ertz this week. And just for the season, I think that this is the season. It's Ertz's contract year. I don't think the Eagles are going to pay him after this year because they like what they have in Goddard. He's a great young tight end. And even against the Rams defense, it's pretty good, pretty athletic defense. I do expect him to continue to be the best player on the Eagles offense. They're reeling at wide receiver, a bunch of injuries. Zach Ertz is getting up there in age. And with 8 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown and 9 targets, yeah, I know we played the Redskins, but that you can't complain with those numbers. Carson Wentz definitely likes him. So do I. Start him this week, 100%. And then we move on to sleepers. This one is a personal pick, and I like Jonnu Smith once again. I don't consider him a sleeper anymore, but people still consider him to be one. And against the Jaguars, which is okay against the tight end, they're like 19, it was like kind of average. But he played well week 1, had 7 targets, 4 catches for 36 yards. And with A.J. Brown week to week, and I just actually, wait, let me look. Yeah, so he just got downgraded to out for this week. So no A.J. Brown. Corey Davis is going to play, but he is ailing, so I expect Jonnu Smith to be a big part of the game plan this week going forward. I don't see it like a crazy thought to consider him a must-start tight end coming up. Given maybe 2 weeks, give it 2-3 weeks, he's gonna be a must-start tight end, 100%. And this one is more of a shot in the dark. Logan Thomas here, because I mean the tight end position's not super deep, so you got to kind of look far and wide. But we got Logan Thomas here. So the Cardinals, better defense, getting better, but they're still okay against the tight end, a 17, so kind of average. And he played well against a suspect Eagles secondary, and I do think he is going to continue to be a primary target for Dwayne Haskins. I mean, honestly, he's their second best option behind Terry McLaurin. So that's about it. Literally, their other best option is like Antonio Gibson, and he's a running back. So yeah, I would say if you have no better option, start Logan Thomas. But this is more of a watch him as he progresses to see how it goes. If he has another great game, sure. I'm riding on the Logan Thomas bandwagon. But even this week, I would consider him in deeper leagues, like maybe 14, 16-man leagues as a tight end streaming option. Yeah, sure. Especially for those with like AJ or was Doyle. He's not playing this week. So yeah, pick up Logan Thomas, see what he can do. And then the last one is O.J. Howard. Now I think this is the season where he finally puts it together. He has Gronk ahead of him. I mean, ahead of him, really, kind of, but he's more talented than Gronk right now. Gronk's more like a decoy for Brady. I don't think Gronk could have a touchdown. Obviously, it's not something you wouldn't be completely surprised about, but Howard is more athletic. I just think he's a better tight end overall right now. Consider him a streaming option in deeper leagues, and maybe If he can have another repeat performance like week 1, yeah, sure, we'll give him a chance in like week 3, week 4 going forward. And as far as sits go, we're going to start with Chris Herndon. So he played all right in week 1. He did have 7 targets, though, which turned into 6 catches. So I do see big games ahead and a potential breakout season for Chris Herndon, but temper expectations. Niners defense, still very good. Ranks 4th against the tight end. I'm sitting Chris Herndon. And the next one is Mike Gesicki, the Penn State tight end, in his 2nd year for the Dolphins. Now, this is the same reasons for Devontae Parker being a sit. We don't trust the Dolphins against the Bills defense. Fitzpatrick, terrible last week, wasn't able to really target anyone properly. So we're fading him. He was a non-factor in 2 games last year against the Bills. He had like 5 catches through 2 games. Yeah, we're not fading him. I like his value in the future as a red zone target and just a big play threat. But right now, I don't see him materializing. I think once Tua becomes a starter, then I think we might see some improvement from Gesicki, but not yet. And then as a bust, this one is tough considering he had a great game last week, but we're going to go Noah Fant. So he plays this is strictly because of the Steelers defense. They shut down Evan Engram last week, who was a similar player to Noah Fant, very athletic tight end. And I think with the Steelers' ability to shut down Engram, they're just going to do the same to Noah Fant. Only reason. Now, down the road, Fant, elite option, 100%. We're starting Fant pretty much any other week. But this week, you could probably do better at the position. If he's your only option, I mean, you're going to have to roll the dice on him. Obviously, wouldn't be too surprised if he had a great game. But I would consider him a potential bust. All right, and then we move on to defenses. So our first defense here, we have the Cardinals. So this is the one strict start I have for the week. So this is because the Washington football team was only able to gain 239 yards against a very mediocre Eagles defense. And Haskins was sacked 3 times, and I expect more of the same. Cardinals defense is improving, so honestly, I would say maybe like I could see 5 sacks and an interception for that Cardinals defense. And then, okay, so for Packers, we have defensive sleepers. So the Packers are the first one. Last year, Stafford was sacked 3 times and had 0 touchdowns in one of the games. So I expect a possible repeat performance from the Packers, especially with Galladay not playing or unlikely to play. And then we also have the Titans here coming in. Now, Clowney was not much of a factor in week 1. So I do expect him to generate some type of pressure in week 2. And the Titans are generally tough at home. So definitely a sleeper pick. Titans, maybe expect a couple points out of them. You could do worse. And now here are the Bucs. So they honestly had a relatively good game in week 1. Now I know they lost and they gave up like 30-something points, but Michael Thomas, they shut him down. They limited the Saints only 271 yards of offense. So aside from C-Mac, the Panthers don't really offer too much, and the Bucs have a very good run defense. They were ranked number 1 last year. So I would expect if they can limit C-Mac somewhat, if they have to put pressure on Teddy Bridgewater to perform, I see the Bucs being maybe a top 10 defense this week. And then the sits, so Patriots. This should be obvious at this point. They've lost so much talent on the defensive side of the ball with how many people have opted out. I think it was like 7 starters, something like that, last time I read. But yeah, against Russell Wilson, no, you're not starting the Patriots defense. There's no chance. Drop them to the waivers this week. All right, and so for the last position, we're going to go with the kickers. So we have Chris Boswell here coming up from the Broncos. So he had 2 kicks last week and 2 extra points, and I expect another strong outing. Last week, the Broncos would have given up a bunch of points to Gostkowski if he was just able to connect on even like 2 kicks. I think he missed 3. Yeah, he missed 3 field goals and 1 extra point. Awful outing. Now, Boswell, I expect him to get the same amount of opportunities, but he will convert. He's a good kicker. I would expect him to have a good amount of points this week. And so as far as sleepers go, we have Mason Crosby here. He was great in week 1, had 2 field goals and 5 extra points. I definitely expect a good outing against the Lions since he had 22 points across 2 games against them last year. And then secondly, we have the former Titans kicker, Ryan Suckup, now playing for the Bucs. So he had only 1 field goal, 2 extra points last week. So, I mean, you could say, oh, okay, well, he didn't really have many opportunities, but I expect a much better performance from the Buccaneers offense. So if they're able to move the ball, maybe have some drive stall, I mean, I would say it's possible because the Raiders were able to manage 2 field goals and 4 extra points, which is what I would expect from Ryan Suckup this week. And then lastly, we have Zane Gonzalez on the sleeper list for the Arizona Cardinals. He missed 2 field goals, not great, but did have a 56-yarder and scored 3 extra points. So you like that kicking power. If he can just shore up these short distance abilities, which was actually his specialty last year. It was just, I don't know how he missed 2 field goals last week. But again, in what should be a good game or a good offensive performance at home against the Washington football team, he's definitely a must start in what is becoming a high-powered offense around Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. And the one sit I have for the week, I mean, again, kickers is not too important, but if you're going to have one sit, it's going to be Ka'imi Fairbairn from the Houston Texans. They're playing the Ravens, first of all, and in what I expect to be a blowout. There's no shot. I have no chance that the Ravens are going to lose this game. Anything's possible, but let's be realistic here. And I do expect that Ravens somehow improved, as if they needed to improve, defensive line after adding Calais Campbell to cause many drives to stall, which is going to limit opportunities for Fairbairn. And in week 1, he missed a field goal against Case. He only had 2 extra points. So leave him on the waivers. And he only had 1 fantasy point last year against the Ravens. And I expect the Texans to be behind early, which will cause them to go for 2 and look for 4th down conversions early and often. So yeah, we're not starting Ka'imi Fairbairn. We're just dropping him into the waivers. He's not trusted anymore. Even though the Texans, once again, questionable decision making by Bill O'Brien, gave him an extended contract. Don't know why. But anyways, that's going to round out the fantasy football list for this week, and we are going to, depending on how this one goes, we are most likely going to continue to do this every single week with the sleepers, the starts, the sits, you name it, for every single week of this NFL season. So stay tuned. I should have another one out, hopefully before Thursday, so I can cover the Thursday night game. I mean, this one wasn't too great. Browns, Bengals. I mean, we saw what was expected. Kareem Hunt, OBJ, Nick Chubb, all great players. Bengals didn't really have any impact. So, yeah, that was what we expected. So next week, going to try and have it out by Wednesday. Hopefully get that Thursday night game included as well. So, yeah, hopefully this list helps you, and I will be here next week for more of the same.